You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتجلي من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
So, Kevin, I wake up today and I go to look to see what the betting lines are on Canada v Honduras because I'm a bit of a strange person that way. And the money line.
What's the money line? Yeah, what's the middle?
Yeah, the money line. If you bet straight for Canada to win, it's 8, which means that the odds for Canada to win are 8-1.
Oh my God.
I can't make that up.
No, nobody can make that up. Nobody can write this. Disney writers, no writers can come up with storyline like this one.
Yes, so 8-1. I'm half of mine to put some money on it, but I don't have any money in my account right now, so perhaps I'll just save it for the hospital bill later tonight. But yeah.
Yeah, if they it depends. It might be good tonight. Who knows? It's sunny outside. They're in San Pedro Sula, and it's not 2012, so maybe things will be different.
They probably will be different. We're going to talk a bit at the end of the show. Kevin and I are going to be a bit in and just have a conversation from a fan perspective. We'll start the show being a little bit more objective. We'll put our journalist hats on. We'll talk a little bit about what needs to happen, what to think for. We'll look forward to tonight, stuff like that. Obviously, today is the day that we've been looking forward to. I don't know.
Dreading? I thought you were going to say dreading. That's where I was going.
Kind of between two words there. For some time since the draw happened. This is San Pedro Sula, the murder capital, I think, of the Western world too.
Honduras is one of the most dangerous countries at least in our neck of the woods.
Yes, certainly there's some people down there. Gavin Day, our friend, he's down there, so stay safe, Gavin. In fairness, anyone who goes to any city like that, if you're smart about it, it's not dangerous. You just have to stay out of trouble, right?
If you folks know me, I went to Mexico City by myself, and it was fine. So if you know how to travel, you are usually fine.
Yes, and most people are good people regardless of where they are in the world. Just, don't get involved in the drug trafficking trade and you'll probably not get murdered.
And there's don't try to go into a luxury cruise and try to make it to the Australia. And basically.
Yeah, you'll be okay. All right. So who might get murdered? Who did get murdered, sort of figuratively last time, of course, was Canadian men's national team, who went down Honduras and played quite simply the most embarrassing game of my life as a fan. In terms of let's start there one last time and revisit that game, that fateful day in Honduras when Canada lost 8-1. Now, to remind people, Kevin, heading into that day, all Canada needed was a draw. A draw would have put them straight through into the hex. However, as we all now know, it didn't turn out that way. They actually hit the post early in that game.
The second minute. They hit the post at the second minute. They had like another chance on that rebound. And it was, who was it? I think it was the Guzman.
Or something, yeah.
But in 2 minutes, like, all right, this is going well. All right, let's settle in. We're good. We're going to be in the game. And then things changed.
Yeah, and then it was a nightmare. I mean, if you've ever it's like living in a dream state. I can't describe it any further. And I'll go back and I'll describe the day. It was at the Duke of Gloucester was the viewing party that day here in Toronto. There were some all over the country, of course. The game was at 3 p.m. So I, being the representative of the Toronto Voyageurs, wanted to make sure that I was there good and early. That's why I was there good and early. That's the story. I'm sticking with it. So I was there around noon. I was the first person in the bar. I was wearing my blue Centennial kit. I remember it. So I'm not wearing that today. In fact, I don't think I'm going to wear a kit today. I think I've decided that the superstition has kicked in. I'm going to go like just completely as casual as I can without any gear of Canada on. That way I can disappear back in the subway after 2 and not have to answer questions about it. But anyway, going back to that. So I showed up wearing my Blue Centennial kit, and I remember I went into the area of the bar called the Snug, which those who've been to Toronto will know where that is, and sat there in the room, which is full of Canadian and TFC memorabilia and trophies all over the place. And I had 1 pint of Keys, and I stood in the window and I just watched on Yonge Street, because it's a nice view of Yonge Street from upstairs there, and thought, this is going to be a good day. This is going to be a day that things are going to come together. It's going to be a great game. We're going to advance to the Hex, and it's going to be wondrous. I'm making plans in my head of how I'm going to, get to Rio. And then people started to show up, and, it was chatter, and everyone was excited. The bar, I'd never seen it as packed as it was before that day. Even though it was 3 p.m. on a work day, it was full, and that place holds probably 500-600 people. It was packed right to the holdback, and everyone's chatting and having a good time. And then, of course, the post gets hit, and it's all this roar, and we're all excited, boom, 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 and then goal Honduras. Okay, well, there's a deflation, but it's not terrible. And then a couple minutes later, goal Honduras. It's a little less quiet now. And then a third goal Honduras, and a pint of beer flies across the room and hits the wall, shatters. I'm not going to betray who did that, but if you've listened to me podcast before, I may have podcasted many times with him. Beer across the roar. And then I got
It's not me. And it's not me.
Yeah, and it's not. So you could do the math there. I don't know. You could put that together if you want. So then I get chatty. When I get stressed or angry, I just start talking. I just talk. That might surprise people that listen to me all the time, because it's all I ever do, right? Chat. People are going to kill me at this point. So I had to leave the Snug before someone murdered me. One of my own kind murdered me. And I remember walking back through the bar area towards the back of the bar. And this is 500 people in the middle of the day, all with beers in their hands, just standing there in stunned, dead silence. The phrase, you could hear a pin drop. Generally, that's an exaggeration. In that bar that day, you could hear every step I took as I walked towards the back of the bar. It was that stunning. And it just, of course, it got worse from there, Kevin. And
you could hear the beer shattered literally on the wall. You could hear the glass shatter.
Well, that's the thing too. No one even blinked. Like the bits. If you throw a full pint of beer across a wall,
you get kicked out of the bar, and there's usually not nice words exchanged.
Yeah, no, that didn't. Everyone just understood. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, right now that makes the most sense of all.
So, like, if I didn't need that beer, I would have done the same.
Yeah, we all needed the beer, and it was a long night. I'm not going to lie after that, but look, this is my pep talk for what it is this morning. Is that it can't get worse than that, and it's gotten better from there since that day, and that was the low point. And I think what most Canadian fans were most disappointed about that game, rather than the scoreline and all that, was just the way it happened and the way that the team just kind of laid down. They gave up in the second half. When Daniel Squizzato was on here earlier this week, I asked him what we had to do to not lose 8-1 again, and his reaction was, play a competent game of soccer, which they didn't that day. And that's why it was embarrassing, and that's why there were many people that probably walked away, at least for a couple years. I was at the next game too, because I am who I am. The next game Canada played, I should say, and there was not 500 people in the bar. There were 5.
Duane, right? Just here, bring back 2 years ago, and the Gold Cup. Not even that's last year. I remember interviewing David Edgar, and we mentioned the 8-1, and in his eyes, something changed. There's still something left from that game that I don't want to say an embarrassment, because it may be a little strong of a word individually for those players, but they feel collectively an embarrassment still from that game.
And they should. I mean, if you're a professional, you're going to feel an embarrassment. And there were players that just decided to get back on the plane and, at halftime, basically, mentally, right? And that's the area that I will never forgive some of them for, is just the way that they just decided to score. Like, because it hurt the program. It hurt the program legitimately. Hurt them trying to get sponsors, hurt them trying to get attention, hurt them a fan base that was growing that day. Again, it was the most packed I've seen a bar. And I was stunned when I came back to this cycle and we got to the semi-round stage in the game against whatever the first game of this round, the El Salvador on the road.
Yeah.
And the bar was packed to the gills again. And it was like, okay, that's a testament to people's loyalty, and they've recovered after all these years. So I think that's, I don't want to be defeatist heading into today, but a competent game of soccer is all that I ask for today. I'd like to win. Obviously, I've been a lifetime Canadian. This is the team that most tugs at my heart, like more than City, more than TFC for sure. So I'd like to win, but I just want to not be embarrassed when I walk out of the bar again today, right, Kevin? And I believe that I won't be. And I believe that Floro has set this team up in such a way that at the very least, it's going to be maybe a frustrating can't score game, but we're not going to walk out shameful that we support this team. And that's a very low bar, but that's the bar that I go in today at.
And if you look in hindsight in the last 4 years, they were all preparation for this moment. What Benito Floro has been brought up to do in this team is to reassure the team defensively, to reassure their mentality, their instinct when on the ball, to make sure that they can absorb in pressure like they're going to face today in San Pedro Sula. So in a way, Canada comes into a game today in a better situation than 4 years ago. 4 years ago, there was some hype that, we can get there. We haven't got there since the 98 process. Maybe we will get to the Hex this time. But this time around, the results of Canada that they have been doing for the last year at least, there's not enough goal scorer, and we all know that. But outside of the goal scoring deficiency, they have reassured the back line, reassured the chemistry between the players, brought in a new couple of players into the fold that would actually help them today.
Yeah. And look, Kyle Larin wasn't around for it. We didn't even know who Kyle Larin was 4 years ago.
2 years ago, we didn't know who he was.
Well, some people here in Ontario did, but I know what you mean. Yeah, generally speaking, the general Canadian population didn't know much about him until well into this cycle. I'll tell you another reason that gives me a little bit of hope today, and it has nothing to do with today and the results or this cycle. It has to do with next cycle, because I've always maintained throughout this that this is about building towards next cycle. That doesn't mean you don't try and win now. It doesn't mean that you can't hope for success now. But realistically, if you're looking at a time in which the Canadian men's national team can be truly competitive at a World Cup level, and that's what I'm talking about here, is probably the next cycle, because we saw it against the Mexico games. That's what it would look like if Canada were to make Russia. Let's face facts. It would be three ugly games probably, but we'd all have fun getting there. And that's not to say we shouldn't aspire to it, but it probably we're not ready yet. That said, I want to keep winning, right? Anyway, you feel all the caveats I'm putting out here. But what gives me other hope is then get your bingo card out. I did not go to a League One Ontario game the day before last year, the 8-1 game, right? Because League One Ontario didn't exist.
Yeah.
So
if Canada gets a result today, it's because of League One. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, Kyle
is that the correlation? Because that's what it looks like.
Kyle Larin did play in League One, no. But the point being, and I know there's a lot of Sack the CSA people out there still, and the CSA is not a perfect organization, but as we've seen with the League One Ontario is an OSA initiative, but it comes from a CSA directive, right? That they want to create the regional Division 3 leagues. We're going to talk about the Ottawa Fury and that situation in the next block here, and then we're going to end the show with a little bit more World Cup talk. But we're seeing changes. We're seeing progressive progression. That's slower than people like, but I believe that it is going the right direction. And it's going to take years. And you know what? I've been in it this long. I'm going to be in it until it finishes. And if I never see a World Cup, then I'm going to enjoy the process. I'm going to enjoy the ride. And that's ultimately the lesson that I learned out of 8-1 is I remember about 2 weeks after it, I think it was a U20 camp or some youth camp that was happening. I forget whether it was men's or women's, whatever. There was something that wasn't senior men's World Cup squad that was happening. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go watch this now because this is what I do. And the Men's World Cup is the big carrot that we all chase and want to see. But the bottom line is that the game never stops. There's always a new tournament to play towards. There's always something going on. So even if it does effectively end today or end outright on Tuesday, there's still a men's U20 camp coming up. And there's still the women to build towards the next cycle. And there's still this and there's still that. And before you know it, it'll be World Cup qualifying again. And that's not what you want to hear maybe, but it's maybe what you need to hear because it's about building constantly and being constantly there. Unless you want to be a bandwagoner. And if you're a bandwagoner, you're probably not listening to us, Kevin. All right.
If you're a bandwagoner, you're not cheering for Canada.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to shift gears for the next half hour, and then we'll end with some World Cup talk again at the end. We're going to talk with the Ottawa Fury after the break.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And welcome back. Kevin, thanks to Dan yesterday for filling in for me on the show with Kevin. I had to help move my friend Carolyn into her new place down in the Pan Am apartments. I was in the Pan Am buildings, Kevin.
Wow, that's actually very interesting. And it's fun that those apartments are being put to good use like I was in Montreal and after 1976. A little bit of similar situation in Toronto.
Yeah, it's a beautiful view, too. I'd never been in one, obviously, before because they were off limits. But there's this wraparound window. Every wall, 3 of the 4 walls have windows on it. And they're full, like, ceiling-to-wall windows. So you can just see the whole city panoramic. It's kind of neat up there. Anyway, yeah, that's what I was doing yesterday. So thanks to Dan. But right after you and Dan, the old rule that as soon as you finish a show, news has to break. Right, Kevin? So
it happens 5 times a week, Wayne. Every day, every time we finish soccer today, I'm almost like debating, should we change the time? Because there's always
news would start an hour later. That's all that would happen.
Exactly. But no, yesterday there was a rumor that was not confirmed, but multiple sources, especially Stuart at Fury Fanatic, a play-by-play sometimes on TV in the Ottawa region as well, a friend of our show. Stuart was talking about how, well, there's a possibility, there's a rumor right now that the Ottawa Fury will leave NASL after the end of this season. So in a few months.
Yeah. And look, it's curious. What's curious about this rumor that the Fury later on, I don't know if they denied it so much as they made a statement about it.
Well, they basically mentioned a no comment. Like, we're not going to comment on this issue right now.
Well, you know what? Let's read the statement. It's basically what Fury Fanatic wrote was that Ottawa was pulling out of the NASL. To the response a couple hours later. And first off, it's a little weird that a professional soccer organization is responding to a Twitter rumor anyway, but it spread like wildfire because of the type of thing that it was. This is what they wrote, the Fury. Fury FC is an NASL franchise and a league. I'm trying to get this. Fury is an NASL franchise and is good standing in the league. Over the last 3 seasons, the Fury have developed strong ties with the Ottawa Gatineau soccer federations and community at large. And the Fury's high caliber play. This is cut off. It's why I'm scrambling to read this. But anyway, the by and large is that they said that they're an NASL team in good standing and that they were going to continue to build the fan experience for the years ahead. They didn't say anything about the rumor. They just said that they weren't going to fold. And that's the curious turn of phrase that's happening here, is that they're not saying that the Ottawa Fury are going to cease to exist in 3 months. They're saying that the Ottawa Fury aren't going to be an NASL team in 3 years. And that's a very different subject, Kevin.
2 possibilities are now in the works if it is actually true that the Ottawa Fury will be out of the NSL after the 2016 season, right? Well, the 2 seasons, the combined season, after the championship of the season, the postseason, the playoffs. For Ottawa, there's the USL possibility, which there's some probably complication there. There's the CSA factor that he mentioned. They're not going to sanction any other team in a league that has an American league. So there's the other possibility, and that's what was spreading like wildfire as well on Twitter after this, is the possibility of Ottawa Fury being in the Canadian Premier League if that Canadian Premier League comes to fruition.
Yeah, look, and people, the two leagues that people are talking about the most are the USL and the Canadian Premier League. And I think we'll start with the latter first, because obviously over the last little while, I've become the person that people want to ask questions about that. And everything has gone silent on that Canadian Premier League project over the past 6 months, I'd say 6 to 8 months even. It's been a long time since there's been any news coming out of it. A lot of people have taken that to mean that it's not happening, that basically that the people have getting cold feet, and that's why we're not getting any announcements. And look, maybe I'm hopelessly naive and hopelessly positive on this, but that's not how I interpret that. I interpret that as them closing ship and saying that we need to keep things silent until we're ready to announce. Now, you counter that with, as you said, Kevin, the CSA's mandate to not sanction further USL teams, and that's directly tied into the initiative to create the Canadian Premier League. And what you have is this void of where this team goes unless the CSL or CPL, I should say, starts next year. And it does, I will admit to anyone, seem a little bit ambitious to be thinking that we're less than a year away from the launch of the Canadian Premier League. You would think that it would take at least 18 months to build the front office infrastructures, to find the players, et cetera, et cetera. 2018 seems much more realistic. So is there a possibility that the Fury would pull out and join the USL for a year, and that the CSL would give them a temporary sanctioning, and that the USL would accept a 1-year acceptance of a team into the league. And that's the question we have to have here today, Kevin. I don't know. Like, I think of it from the USL perspective. Do they really want to have a team in for 1 year?
Well, it depends. If you have 49 team and one team more actually helps how everything unfolds, maybe you do. Maybe there's ulterior motives to this. Maybe they're going to have a USL team and eventually they're going to create a Canadian Premier League team, but keep a team in the USL. They have a team in the PLSQ now, the Otto Fury Academy. So I don't know, maybe there's that aspect in the future too, that they're thinking, look, we're going to have a Canadian Premier League. We're going to have a team there. Maybe we should have a USL. Maybe there's that aspect to it too. If that's a possibility to have 1 year in the USL, you need to promise that you're going to be there later on as well. I don't know. Maybe that's the case.
Yeah, and the other side of this argument from the Canadian Premier League perspective is that there could be a couple things going on. First off, the Ottawa Fury have always long been rumored to be highly involved with these talks. So the fact that we're hearing that they're ready to pull out of the NASL could be an indication that we're ready to get an official announcement on it, and maybe they are starting next year. That, again, seems ambitious. But then again, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There could be front offices built. There could be GMs already out there ready to start working, right? There could even be informal talks with players, although I would suspect that that was happening. You'd start to hear more rumors from agents and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll probably hear about that.
Yeah, it could be that they're ready to go. But at the same, I don't know, like this. I get why they'd want to go. The other side of it too is that maybe they've had a falling out with the Canadian Premier League. Maybe they're frustrated with the lack of the speed that this is happening at, and they're looking to sort of pressure the Canadian Soccer Association to get their ass in gear, basically. And maybe they will stay in NASL for another year, and this is just a rumor because they didn't. Also, that's the other option that people aren't really considering possible, because we have such a bleak view of the NASL right now that we just assume, of course, we just assume, of course, they're going to pull out. We don't assume that they might play another year there, right? Because if there's a CPL announcement in a month that says they're starting in 2018, and again, going back to the USL thing, do they really want a team in for 1 year? Then maybe the Fury just suck it up and go, okay, let's play the other year. Although there was a report in the Ottawa Sun yesterday that says they're losing about $2 million a year. So that's probably part of that too. Maybe they even go, I hesitate to see this, but they could even release all of their professional players and come with a completely local team and put it into the PLSQ or Ontario League One for a year too. That's a possibility.
And then graduate that whole team to the Canadian Premier League or something.
Yeah, that would be the other option too, which is the people that would not be. I'm sure that would upset the fans that have supported the Fury, and I get why, but that would be a third option if they can't face losing the money that they're losing. We should mention, Kevin, you said that the Ours of the Fury podcast has a special edition that's going out later today as well.
I'm going to put it on the network right after the show.
Yeah, so you might want to listen to this. They're going to have a little bit more local view there than we have, but certainly we can talk from a national perspective. Let's move from that. I think we've covered most of the bases there and talk about the other side of this, which is what the hell does this mean to the NASL? Your thoughts?
Tough 2016, isn't it, for the NASL? If you look at things as a whole, the Rayo situation, the stealing or not getting into an agreement about the turf and all that, and the fact that the team's probably going to fold at the end of the season because of the mother team, you can call it, from Vallecano pulling out the money. You have as well a situation with Fort Lauderdale earlier this year. Now, this rumor, it is very interesting to see what's going to happen. It seems like NASL trying to grow too fast, and they had that momentum a year ago, and it seemed like they lost this momentum this season. Unfortunately, it's always good to have most amount of soccer team. I'm not against having more teams means more players, means more soccer. Of course not. It's just sometimes things are not done for the right reason. And when I mean the right reason is a team should be in a city because a city wants to see a team, not for marketing battle reason with another league, first of all. Second of all, if you just do a team to do a brand of Europe and bring it here, and it's not going to work either. Things need to be done organically. Is it too much to ask? Is it too much to ask to just have a fan base grow of a team and support that team? And I don't know. It seems so complicated sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, this whole NASL USL stuff. It goes back to that split, which you're familiar with because it really was driven largely by Joey Saputo.
It was a USL. USL existed in a way, and owners of the most popular team in the USL, that's between 2010 and 2011, created their own league. They just like took off, created their own league, which is what the NSL is now. So it all stemmed from the time period between 2009 and 2011 when owners became bigger. Some owners were making a lot of money and they were not happy with the way the USL was run, but USL was different as well back then. So no, it all stems from arguments around a table between 2009 and 2011.
Yeah, look, it's ambition. It was about ambition, but you look at the teams that made that jump, and they're all gone now. They've accomplished what they wanted, which was to get up to the highest tier. Like, I mean, they essentially felt that the USL at that time, and I was podcasting. It feels like a different century ago, but at any rate,
but they were. It's very different as now as well. USL itself is a totally different type of league. It was the United Soccer Leagues by then.
Yeah, there was a feeling that the USL wasn't ambitious, wasn't meeting their goals, wasn't going to allow them to spend money in the way that they wanted to sort of build a market the way they wanted. But the teams, they were Portland, Montreal, Vancouver. They were all part of that back then. They're all MLS teams now, so they're gone. That money backing, that sort of stability, which gave the NASL the early lead in this battle between it and the USL, when the USL clearly was 3 and they clearly were 2 at that point for a couple of seasons. Once you started to lose that top and you started to try and replace it with more and more teams that were fly-by-nights, and that's clearly what's happening here, is they're trying to get into these markets where they're sort of the big dog. It lost any type of relevancy in terms of being anything close to what you'd want to talk about. I do think that if you go back to the days when the Timbers and the Impact and the Whitecaps were all part of the USL, were all part of that tier, there was an argument to be made that the best teams at that level would have been competing for the last playoff spots in MLS. I don't think you can make that battle anymore. I think that and I know Steven Sandor disagrees with this, but I think there's a gap now that has built because the money is getting pulled further and further away from that. And you could talk about whether that's the business model or whatever, which is a debate we don't want to go into today, but I think that the reality is it's happening.
I'm going to bring the I word into it, Duane. Infrastructures. Look at the infrastructures MLS team have now with their training centers and all that, compared to some NASL team, because some NASL team have very decent infrastructures, but nothing compares to the Centre Nutrilin in Montreal or the Toronto practice facility or the ones that are being built across the league, which are literally world class, are comparable to Cobham for Chelsea, to other places in Europe as well. So this is something that helps the talent itself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you ever been to Kiev, Kia Training Ground here in Toronto is like, it'd blow your mind. Like, I've been fortunate enough to be inside it, and it's world class for sure. That's not an exaggeration when people say that. I think there's people in this market that think it is. But
when Real Madrid came this year to use the Montreal Impact, and last year was Chelsea, there's a reason those teams come here. It's not because it's just another training center, because it's, like you mentioned, and like I said, it's world class. It's made to the highest level of technology possible. Rehab facilities, training rooms, recuperation room, rehab rooms. It's the amount of money and intent built in those walls. It's truly almost mind-boggling. It's bigger than you can imagine. People don't understand how nice and how the investment that Joey Saputo and other owners in MLS did. It's talking about tens of millions of dollars.
All right. Final thought on this before we break. There is the hybrid. I saw some people talking about this the other day too, the hybrid model of the Canadian Premier League launch. And if you go back to my very first report, what I reported, and we're going back 3.5 years now that this has been going on, was that the CSA and the NASL were in talks to create basically what would be a Canadian division. And the idea was that they would have, 8 teams or 6 teams or whatever it was that would be the Canadian division that would play mostly an interlocking schedule with each other, but would also have some interdivision games with some American opponents, and then be part of the playoffs overall in the league at the end of the season. So it would kind of be a hybrid, right? Like, they would have more teams here in Canada that would be competing together. They would be ultimately, I think, working towards eventually separating, but that they would be stabilizing that league for a while. That was the original plan. That fell by the wayside largely because the NASL got big eyes and started looking elsewhere. And the sources that I have here have told me many times in the past that the NASL kind of just dropped the ball there. They just walked away from a meeting and went, that sounds good, and then just didn't return calls for 6 months. That's the message that I've received over the years. So there is some thinking up here now that maybe they've shifted gears, and because they want to cooperate more with with the American authorities. They don't want to have such a battleground anymore now that maybe they're looking at the USL and they're saying maybe we could create 6-7 teams off the hop that would go into a USL Canadian division, and that would then be what the genesis ultimately of a Canadian Premier League would be. So you would play a few seasons as a Canadian division, always working towards the point where you would pull apart, and then you would thank the USL for their time, and maybe even create like some kind of relationship that would be ongoing over the years, which would allow some cross-border play. Because the reality is Canadians do associate playing with American teams. That is a rivalry that they have. So to lose that would be a loss, right? So that might be a hybrid model that Ottawa is looking at, and that's why this USL situation is being talked about. Just something to think about there, Kevin.
No, exactly. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the Ottawa region. Hopefully, the only thing we actually really want to still exist is a team. We do want that to happen. Wherever they play, it is important, but we don't want to lose the Fury.
Yeah. All 5 Canadian professional teams have players on the Canadian national team, this particular roster. So let's hope that stays similar in the days ahead and continues to grow as more and more teams are added. Kevin, let's take a break. We're going to come back with a little bit of news, bits and bites, and then we'll wrap up the show with more talk about Honduras.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
I don't want to ignore our American listeners, but what is there really to say about today's game against St. Vincent and the Grenadines? SVG.
Well, St. Vincent and Grenadines is the only team eliminated so far in the World Cup qualifiers in CONCACAF. They could play spoilers, but no, they just want to see Josie score. I think if Josie score, all will be good in the United States.
I guess, yeah. It's look, I not get hurt. There's lots. I mean,
that might be too much to ask. I didn't say that because sometimes he gets hurt while scoring, but they want him to score at least.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes, exactly. Look, I don't know what to say about it exactly. Like, this is a bit of a layup. Sometimes you miss layups, but if you're at the professional level and they're unattested layups, you're not going to probably miss them very often. So I wouldn't, and even if you miss them, you might get the rebound and put it in, which is kind of where I'm at with the U.S. game today. I think that they would probably handle this pretty well. It's more a matter of how many, not whether they win. That's kind of where I'm at there. So forgive us, American listeners, for not really dwelling on this, and you enjoy your day because you're going to have a lot less stressful day than the Canadian listeners are going to have. So enjoy that day, guys.
It's going to be something. Oh, and here's a little news for you. You remember a few months ago after the Copa, we almost made a special show on the international retirement of Lionel Messi. Guess what he did yesterday?
Yeah, I know.
He played, he scored, and Argentina won their game and took the lead in their qualification process for Russia.
Yes. Look, at the time, I think we nailed it, though, is that we thought that he was making that statement to put pressure on their federation, which was in shambles. So those people, there's our people out there that because there's pushback against Messi and there's pushback against Barcelona in recent days because they just always are. They want to paint him as like a sore loser that day. He wasn't really a sore loser so much as there was a lot going on around the Argentina team. But I think we're all going to be happy that he's playing, and that's kind of the bottom line. And hopefully the Argentina Federation can sort of get their together and continue to push forward. And I have a very soft spot for the Argentina team. I cheer for them in World Cups often because I just like the way they play and I just like the passion around that team. But it's kind of hard to ignore some of the crap going on with the Federation, Kevin.
No, exactly.
All right, that's looking at my news bits and bites here. No, it's a Bits and Bites. Do you have Bits and Bites down there? I don't think they're in the States. It's like a snack food. It's a trail mix with garlic on it. It's quite good.
Wow. I never actually tried that before.
Maybe they're not in Quebec either. It could be an Ontario thing. I don't know. They're very good. Anyway, all right. That's Callum Ellis.
The red card is rescinded, Duane. I touched on earlier this week. The DISCO, MLS Disciplinary Committee, took a look at it and rescinded the red card, making him available next Wednesday versus Orlando at Stade Saputo.
Yeah. Again, I think that if you look at the angle, the Montreal Impact fans out there that are still raging at the machine against the referee in this particular case, if you look at the angle that he was at, I can understand. And I think maybe if you take a step back now that the red card's gone, you can understand too. You won the game too. So everyone's calm, right? You can take a step back and understand how the call was made. It looked like a clothesline from that angle. So there you go. There was also three fines that were levied from to Montreal players, one to Toronto player for the mass confrontation, which is,
and we didn't talk about this week, but Sunday in the USL game, the 401 derby in Vaughan between FC Montreal and TFC2, there was a skirmish. There was people. There's Marco Dominguez for the FC Montreal was suspended for the remainder of the season. One player for TFC is suspended as well. Others have had fines. There was another mass confrontation and shoving, and one punch kind of got thrown. So yeah, there was the 401 derby does trickle down, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I imagined it actually be a little bit more edgy at the lower levels, I would suggest.
Because it's players that know each other, that are battling against each other for national team spots sometimes. So, no, you do have that history on the pitch at the highest level. You don't necessarily have, because Didier Drogba didn't grow up in the Canadian system.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's also they're mostly Quebecers playing Ontario guys that they played throughout their entire youth system too, right? So
yep, exactly. Though in championships and interprovincial cup at every level, they played against each other, and now at the highest level, they have a rivalry included. So no, there's reasons why that game became a little bit chippy on Sunday.
Exactly. All right. This one I like as a little storyline here. Zenit St. Petersburg, which of course is a famous club in the Russian Premier League that most of us would be familiar with. They've been in the Champions League several times.
That's where Hulk plays.
Yeah, there you go. Hulk. Anyway, exactly. There had been apparently allegedly offered 8 million euros to change their name to Zenit Burger King.
Doesn't seem a lot. It actually seems very little to change your name from St. Petersburg, which is your team, to Burger King.
Someone joked that they should, if they're going to go that way, they should change it completely and go St. Petersburger King.
Well, Zenit St. Petersburg King.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that would be the better way to go. Okay.
Zenit presents St.
King.
Petersburg Burger Kings.
I don't know what to say about this. I mean, they haven't done it yet. This is the Russian Premier League, so if it's going to happen somewhere, it wouldn't shock me if it happened there.
In England, you try to change the name of your stadium and you get a riot. In Russia, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Well, if you had to have a naming rights, if the Impact were offered to change their name, just real quickly, Kevin, off the top of your head, what corporate tie-in would you accept as the Montreal Impact's new name?
Any Saputo brand would be easy here because it's the owner of the Impact, but it'll be more fun. I don't know if you the Putinvilles, or I don't know, the Montreal Hot Dogs team, or institution Schwartz's. So how about the smoked meats? The Montreal smoked meats.
I think that would work too. Yeah, the cheese.
The Montreal spices? The Montreal steak spice.
Yeah, the poutines or the cheese poutines. But anyway, yeah, no, I think in Toronto, the obvious one is sitting right on their chest every game. They just have to spell it out rather than do the acronym, the cute little BMO acronym. It'd be the Toronto Bank of Montreal's.
That's awesome.
You gotta appreciate that. I don't know if people in the States know that it's the Bank of Montreal sponsors Toronto, but anyway.
When's the last time did you hear somebody say Bank of Montreal? They always say BMO. There's a reason, because they don't want to make people remember that originally they were Bank of Montreal. It's like TD Bank. It's never Toronto Dominion, because they're outside of Toronto, so they don't want that to be known.
And well, the Bank of Montreal has been headquartered in Toronto since 1978 or so.
After the second one, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's kind of funny there. I've never been quite sure who should be more embarrassed by the Bank of Montreal sponsoring TFC or Montreal. I'm never sure which one.
I know.
Both ways. You can make fun of it both ways, really, when you think about it.
In 2012, when it was announced, I made that joke many times.
There you go. The Toronto Bank of Montreal. So I like it. But Zenit Burger King. God. You know what? Here's the thing. I final thoughts on that. To be serious about it for a second, there's always an easy solution with this corporate sponsorship stuff that people don't like it and they complain about it and they moan about it. Don't call it by the name then. We do it here in Toronto all the time with this baseball stadium. Go walk down to the
just call it Skydome.
Yeah, ask where Rogers Center is and ask where Skydome is and see who knows which is which. Because Rogers Center people might look at you blankly, say where the Skydome is, everyone knows where that is. So just don't accept it.
And what's the rule, Duane? If you're not paid by somebody to call it by a sponsorship name, you're not obliged to.
Yeah, and it always frustrates me from a media perspective how much they've just bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. I mean, at this point in time, if I'm working in the sports media pages, I'm like, I'll call you by your sponsorship name, but you're going to throw us some of the money. And that would have been exactly what I would be saying in that. Whatever.
So when's the next time are you going to the Canadian football stadium?
Well, yeah, the National Soccer.
The National Soccer Stadium, yeah, exactly.
I know. That's the funny thing too, though, because some corporate names can get so ingrained that people will get like, well, even Skydome. Skydome's actually it's an organic name. There was the Skydome Corporation, which is the conglomerate of people that built the building with a lot of public support. But at any rate, so it's not technically just a total organic name, but nonetheless, it's a lot more organic than bloody Rogers Center. But BMO is exactly the analogy I'm looking for here too. Like even when, let's say BMO, well, they've re-upped it for several more years, but had they not, and it was like, I don't know, the Shoppers Drug Mart Stadium or something, we'd still call it BMO, right?
The Pizza Stadium.
Exactly. There was some rumor for a while the Pizza was going to be the shirt sponsors for TFC, and I always thought that was a little bit too much down market. Although Pizza would be kind of funny in a soccer jersey as well.
Oh yeah, well, that's where you'll get Dom on the road playing for you.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's a pizza sponsorship, you know Dom's coming.
It's terrible pizza, by the way. Pizza is terrible.
On the spot, it does a job. As soon as it gets cold, like, cold pizza's good or not pizzas. It's like instant gratification or you're just not going to like it at all.
We live in a city here in Toronto where there's a massive Italian population, so there are much better options for slices and for pies if you want to get pizza. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I like 2 for $1 if I'm going to go for cheap pizza. It's actually not bad.
Why? Because I get 2 for the price of 1.
There you go. It's Friday. We're getting off topic here. I have Yaya Toure written down here as a Bits and Bytes news item. It's probably me being city center, but it is a bit of a news article that someone like Yaya Toure is completely now off of the Champions League roster for Manchester City. That is newsworthy, I think, and sort of spells the end. I'm baffled that he's still at City, though. Like, I think this is just Yaya not willing to accept any sort of anything other than what he wants. So he's just going to sit around and collect his paycheck for 6 months. I don't know what to make of that, but it'd be fun watching him in the League Cup against whatever.
Same for Bastian. Bastian has been included in the first 25-man roster for Man United for the next 6 months. So Schweinsteiger, I guess, is not coming to MLS in the near future.
Yeah, next year. January is always when most of those players would come over if they're going to come natural. Well, they usually come in the summer, but the January window is the better place to get them anyway from an MLS perspective. That's when Javinko came over. So there you go. All right. On that note, I think we'll take a break and then we'll come back and we'll finish it with just our general thoughts on what the hell we have to go deal with today.
You are listening to SPN Radio, powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Soothing Sounds of St. Clair. That's telling because we are going to put that Ours the Fury podcast started after that. And of course, they are part of St. Clair.
Yes, Ryan from Ours is the Fury is one of the prominent members of St. Clair.
There you go. And that's who that bumper is. Okay. I don't know, Kevin. What I sort of gave my pep talk earlier today. I'm having a funny kind of I don't want to be dismissive of mental illness, so I'm not going to call it like I'm not having a crazy day. I'm just kind of having an up and down day here today. I'm going from like manic to like depressed, so you can figure out what that would feel like. But yeah, it's not been a stable morning here in the Rollins household.
No, under us today. That San Pedro Sula ugly pitch, bumpy pitch. They're going to be on it again. we're going to see some red jerseys trying to get something done in San Pedro Sula. I don't know. I'm actually, the feeling down there is better than 4 years ago. There was not as much partying in front of Canada's hotel last night. There's that. Seems like things are different. I wouldn't call it the 4-letter word that starts with H. Hope. I don't know if it's there today yet. But I'm more on this, if I have a scale of closer to hope or back to 8-1, I'm closer to hope.
Yeah, I don't know where I am exactly. I'm I believe that we won't lose 8-1 to steal the story, and that's
we might lose 2-1, but not 8-1.
And look, I don't even know what I want either, to be honest with you. Like, I almost want to be put out of my misery early. This is the funny thing too. If they were to lose 1-0 today, or 2-1 or whatever, lose by a goal, they're sitting in a situation where there would still technically be a chance in that final game. If they lose by 2 or 3, it's done. I mean, there's always going to be a technical chance, but if they were to lose by 3, they would have to overturn like an 8-goal differential in the final match. Like, it just wouldn't be happening, right?
Here's a funny information, Duane, that maybe gives a different opinion of what we have of Honduras. In the newspaper this morning in Honduras, there was a predicted lineup by Diaz, the reporter, and they actually included Will Johnson and other players are not even in the roster. So maybe this feeling of we don't necessarily recognize Canada, we're not aware of them, we didn't scout them. Maybe it's not just the newspaper. Hopefully it's Honduras national team and they haven't seen the progress that Canada did, and if they're not ready, they'll be surprised with an Arfeld and what a Kyle Laramee can do against them, which wasn't the case 4 years ago.
Oh, we did beat them in the game in Canada, but I mean, Honduras, I think, was happy to only lose by 1 there. That seems strange, but that's kind of how teams approach this. This has always been I've said this 100,000 times, and I'll bear repeating it a little more. This has always been the entire cycle. It's been this game, and I don't mind it. I mean, I'm starting to get nervous a little bit right now, which is irrational because I'm not actually out there playing, but you know what I mean. I'm starting to get a little bit. The butterflies are stepping up. It'll be everything in my power not to leave to the pub already, which would be a really dumb idea because the game doesn't start for 5 hours.
You'd be alone for a few of those hours. Like, where's everybody? Oh yeah, it's early.
I can think of a couple people that might show up too. But at any rate,
hey David.
Yeah, well, there you go. Anyway, yeah, look. Can they win? I don't know. That seems ridiculous, but I think they can get a 0-0 draw down there. And if they do, then we're going to have a lot different conversation on Monday about the game on Tuesday. And this is ultimately why I decided not to spend $800 to go to Vancouver, was because what happens if they lose by 3 tonight? Do I really want to spend that kind of money to watch a funeral procession? And I don't. No offense, to be a dead rubber in all intents and purposes of that day. And if it was in Toronto, I would go. If it was in Ottawa, I'd go. If it was in Montreal, I'd go. But going to Vancouver is pretty expensive. And why does it cost so much money to fly in Canada anyway?
Because it's a long and large country, Duane.
I know, but I could fly to Lima, Peru for less money than it would cost me to fly to Vancouver. I know, I looked. Anyway.
Yeah, well, that's because people want you to go to Lima. Do they want you to go to Vancouver? It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, anyway. I don't know if I'm wanted in Vancouver.
Well, there's that issue too. Like West's like, hey, it's Rollins, pump up the price.
Maybe they've got some kind of IP check on me.
Hey, we got Rollins again. It's the Rollins alarm.
Yeah, they have some spy that just follows me around. Maybe I'm getting a little bit self-centered when I say that. All right, well, let's go this, Kevin, to end the show. What is your prediction? How do you think today is going to go?
Oof. Canada will be able to absorb pressure better. That's what I predict. I don't predict 8 goals. I predict maybe they'll concede 1, maybe even 2. But can Laramee bury that 1 or 2 chance? Because he's going to have it. He's going to have 1 or 2 clear look on net today. Can he bury it? If you look at the near history of him in that red national team jersey, he's not going to bury it. But things can change, and it starts today. If he buries that 1 or 2 look that he does have, Canada will get a result. Albeit it may be a win, maybe a draw. But if Laramee scores, Canada gets a result.
Okay, so if Laramee scores, Canada gets a result. Whether that's a win or a draw, we're not too sure yet. So you're predicting either 1-0 or 1-1, basically, is what we're getting here.
Exactly, because I predict he's going to score. So that's my prediction. 1-0, 1-1 for Canada.
All right. Look, this is almost cliche to say because it's obvious, but the first 10 minutes of this game are going to dictate what this game looks like. It's a national holiday in Honduras. They've basically done everything they can to emulate the exact same experience they had in the last game, in the 8-1 game. And it makes sense. If it was the roles were reversed, we'd be doing the exact same thing to emulate we'd be playing at the same stadium. We'd be doing everything because it's all a mental game. They want to take advantage of that. So you're going to have a very loud and rambunctious crowd in the middle of the heat, and it's supposed to be quite hot down there today, that are going to try and do everything they can to be a 12th man. And historically speaking, Canada has not done well against that. However, I have seen some progress that way. I think that this current generation of Canadian players has more exposure to playing in Central America. It's why I think some of the work that the program is doing to get their teams, their youth teams down there more often is good. I think they should be doing it more often even still, but nonetheless, it's good. So the fact that all three of our professional teams in MLS are playing in CCL pretty consistently. Well, there's one every year, right? That means that there's what Canadians they have, and there should be more, but that's a story for another day. But what Canadians they do have are being exposed to it more. So there's more experience there to be able to handle that a lot more. As you said, there wasn't a party outside the hotel this time. That was in Panama, but Honduras does stuff too. But anyway, so that's an advantage too. So if they come out, like I'm hesitating to give a prediction because I need to see them first. I need to see whether they need diapers is basically what it comes down to.
We didn't talk about Honduras, Duane, as well. Honduras is not the same team as 4 years ago. Honduras did not have a great 4 years between last year and this year. They had a decent Olympic this year, but that doesn't correlate to the game today. They did not have a great World Cup at all. And, that is something that it's tangible as well. Is Honduras is not the same Honduras as 4 years ago.
Yeah, and look, I was reading Gavin Day's feed the other day, and he said that basically when talking to the locals down there that they don't have a lot of confidence in the team. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't win today. It doesn't mean that they're not the second best team in that group. And I think most of those locals would probably think they are the second best team in the group because Canada doesn't have a great reputation down there, as they shouldn't, because we've earned it, right? Anyway, this is where it comes down to me. And I said this off the top, and I'll finish it one more time. If they can get through that 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes, and still be 0-0, and I don't think like if we get a goal early, then great. That might actually make me panic more, but nonetheless, that's my own issue. If they can get through the first early part, 10, 15 minutes, then I think that it's going to be competitive to the end. It's going to be within a goal to the end. And look, I think Honduras is going to win. I hope they only win by 1 to give me some level of hope to watch the game on Tuesday, but it's, I can't get past that. I can't completely be irrational in my prediction. So I do think that Honduras wins this game, and I fear that it's going to be 2-0, which is pretty much the worst case scenario in terms of eliminating. But I also think that if they play with heart and they play with a little bit more determination, not a little bit more determination, a lot more determination than they did in the 8-1 game, and they don't embarrass themselves, then I'm not going to walk out of the pub angry. I'm going to walk out of the pub disappointed. I'm going to walk out of the pub sad because it's always sad when a cycle ends.
I'll be crying, but I'm not going to be angry.
But yeah, you will move on. I won't feel as despondent, and that's kind of where I am today. I am nervous, as I said, but I'm not as nervous as I was before that game because I legitimately thought they had a chance then. I don't legitimately think they had a chance, and I haven't in its entire cycle thought that they had a chance to get to the World Cup. Not that I don't want it, but I think the key here is to not feel anymore is what I'm saying.
One other thing that we don't talk about, Duane, is the players themselves. Imagine how we feel about this game. Imagine the players, okay? And some of the players have experienced it. They're walking in today in a place where they have their worst memory of their career and have a chance to erase that, have a chance to make it good, have a chance to make reality happen and put a Band-Aid on that very still exposed wound of that 8-1. They have a chance today, and that will probably fuel them more than 4 years ago, and that has been fueling them for 4 years. I have David Edgar in my mind because I can see it in his eyes last year when I talked to him in person, and you can see it in other players. Why do you think Will Johnson was so mad at not being in this team? He understands that he doesn't have the form and the fitness. He knows he just started playing back for his club, but that wound still hurts him. He would have loved to be there today to do that. So that's why he was not happy. That's why there was that conversation this week, is because Will Johnson wanted to go in Honduras and beat them today, and he's not able to do so. So that's the reason behind Will Johnson's emotions this week. But that tells me that the other players that are there have the same fire in him, and that today they have a chance to erase that result.
Fair enough. All right, quickly, if you're in Canada and are looking to watch this thing, if you're in the United States and want to watch the U.S., just go to the American Outlaw site. We'll tell you what to do there. But if you're in Canada and you're looking to watch this thing, this is on voyagers.org, but I'll read it off real quick. In Vancouver at the Pacific National Exhibition, there is a CSA-hosted event with an outdoor patio and beer garden, as well as a bar called Red Card, which I haven't heard of, to be honest with you. But anyway, it's listed here. At Regina, it's at The Lobby. At Winnipeg, it's at Nicolina's, at Montreal's Frappe. Toronto is Scallywags, which I will be at in Hamilton at the Pheasant Plucker. The Pheasant Plucker, which sounds like a charming place. I bet you they have good.
I was going to mention, I bet they have good chicken. They have to. If not, well, they just don't have their name. If they don't even serve chicken, there's something wrong with that place.
Order the wings. At Ottawa, it's at Georgetown. In Edmonton, it's at Tavern on White. At Calgary, it's in Barcelona. Not in Barcelona, it's at Barcelona. Okay. In Saskatoon, it's on Sports on Tap. At Victoria, it's at Yates Street Tap House. And Durham, which would be Oshawa area, it's at the Buffalo Wild Wings. Any other parties, you can tweet at me today at 24th minute. I'll get it out there and let you promote that. But in the meantime, Kevin, I think I'm going to go pet the cat to calm myself down now. And in the meantime, I'll let you, as always, say
I thought you were going to. I'm going to go pop some Xanax to relax. That might be a very good option to do so before 5 p.m. today. To hear all about the fallout of today's game, stay tuned to SPN Radio Monday, 11 a.m. live. We do have soccer today, with all the ramification of the World Cup qualifier games from this weekend. And until then, have a great soccer. Trying to breathe. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.